sensing a bingo, ladies and gentlemen. Next number, unlucky for some, and especially those who've already bought the game, 13!
You bingo!
Oh, we have a winner, and your prize, a copy of 13 the Remake!
This is the worst punishment I've ever had.
All joking aside, I'm fairly reluctant to have anything bad to say about 13 because I thoroughly enjoyed the original, which was released way back in 2003. The original was developed by Ubisoft, and today we're seeing that still very playable classic remade today. The fact I enjoyed the original and the developers are by no means big hitters in the industry, I want to support the game and smaller devs like PlayMagic. You can't though. You just can't. Big, medium or small developer, I've got to be true and honest about this game. It's a big mess at launch. Microids, the publishers of the game, have released some day one patch notes, which always confused me why any game would need a patch on day one, but we got one, and it's a huge list of fixes. But it turned out that I was actually playing the latest version, and it made me realise that this game is so far from being finished. Firstly, let's talk about whether this is actually a remake or a remaster. I played a little of the original 13 before playing the remake to remind myself of what's what. Straight off the bat, the first thing I noticed is that the voice actors haven't changed at all. In fact, they've used the same vocal audio from the original, with Adam West, who plays General Carrington, and Eve, that's right, Eve, who plays Major Jones. Now, there was nothing wrong with the voice acting in the original, so I understand why they've not changed this. What definitely needed changing though was the all-round gameplay, the fluidity of the players' movements, the enemy AI and their animations when they're killed. Now, in 2003, the reaction of an enemy receiving one to the dome was a little janky, but I swear it's even worse now. Animations aside, they seem to vibrate on their way to the ground, which is definitely not intentional. Then there's the fluidity. Again, in 2003 it was to be expected, but in 2020, with all the varying game engines in existence now, it still just feels lifeless. The guns don't pack anywhere near a big enough punch, and that's compounded with the fact that the enemies react like a piece of potato from a spud gun has smacked them in the head. They've added the option to aim down the sights, which feels a lot more 2006 rather than 2003, so that's good. The frame rate was all over the place. Running on a 2080 Super with i9 at 1440p, I was dropping to 27 frames when entering rooms and spiking up to 120 a second later. The audio glitched numerous times where voices in important plot parts were being skipped over entirely. The AI would just run at me while I stood there with no attempt to shoot until I shot them. The menus, guys, the menus. Never did I ever think when I started reviewing games that I'd ever mention menus in a review, but the menus can literally require a full restart. Not as big a deal for console players, but PC players will likely jump straight into the settings to configure their game. Good luck getting out of the menu once you're in though. The mouse doesn't work on menus for a start. I thought, okay, never mind. Then each setting needed to be highlighted, selected, edited, and then manually saved to continue. Then after a while I realised it's totally configured for consoles, and I started to play with a controller, which is not what you want really with a first person shooter on a PC, but then after switching, the pause menu just became unusable and I'd set the game with unplayable low sensitivity, so a restart was required. Even playing on controller on PC, the tutorial prompts would come up with keyboard instructions. To top it off, I had hard crashes 4 times in various points. I had moments where I'd fire my gun with no sound and moments where my gun just wouldn't fire at all. This is all just the tip of the iceberg, sadly, and be that as it may, I just don't feel comfortable completely ripping into small developers' projects, because even though I could continue to bang on about the game's monstrous list of bugs and problems, I think I've given you, the viewer, enough to go by already to not buy this. Certainly not yet, anyway. After all that being said, there's something here. There's still something here, and frustratingly, what's here is what was in the original too. We play as 13 waking up on a beach with amnesia. We must piece together the puzzle to our recent past, and we quickly uncover the fact that 13 is tangled up in a group of conspirators attempting to overthrow the US government after the assassination of the president. As we progress through the linear espionage game, we're met with quick flashbacks to join the dots of our past and solve the mystery to who is 13 and what the bloody hell has he been up to? The visuals are technically improved in the remake compared to the original, but I'm not sure if it'll be a crowd pleaser. I think there's still huge elements of the graphics that have been improved for the better, and the comic book cell shading effect is still here, though subtle changes have made it slightly more gamey and a little less comic booky, if that makes any sense whatsoever. For starters, the pencil edges of the characters seem a little thinner, and the fact that the lighting effects, albeit look really impressive, they do add such a modern game feel to the environments that I think die-hard fans of the original will miss that 100% dedication to the comic book effect. Don't get me wrong, we still have the onomatopoeia effects which appear with each sound effect, the same effect as those old school Batman episodes with Adam West. One really clever element that deserves a lot of credit is that when crouched during stealth moments, the player can see the onomatopoeia tap 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 effect indicating enemy footsteps, giving away their position. This is a fresh new angle on the typical X-ray vision that we see in stealth games. We still have the comic book panels appearing in the corner of the screen either when an in-game plot point is happening or a nice alternative angle of the headshot you've just pulled off. Some of the environmental visuals too were really top draw. There's the simplistic lockpicking, a wide variety of weaponry and plenty of ammo scattered around the place too. A few extra collectibles in hidden areas that once collected add bits of lore to your dossier, if that's your thing. The story is really the pull for this game though, by far the best bit, and if you've been put off going for the remake, the original is worth it for that alone. Something I mentioned in my recent video revisiting Dishonored was the artistic choice to go with cell shading, cartoon or comic book art styles. Not being photorealistic just like a painting will always give any piece of art a greater chance of standing the test of time because graphically, photorealism is upgrading so quickly, it's only a few years before something looks outdated. Whereas the 2003 version of 13 still looks fantastic for its age, and that's purely because of the art style being so unique and true to itself. A quick mention for the multiplayer, because it's virtually non-existent on day one, with local multiplayer the only option, and hopefully they'll add to this too. One of the first points I made in this review was asking if this actually is a remake. I noticed quite a few new cutscenes and the environments have definitely been redone. But that was one area that didn't really need it. I wasn't expecting such a buggy mess from the get-go, but I was expecting a much bigger improvement to the fluidity of the gameplay and the feedback I'd received from the simple things like running, jumping, melee combat and firing a weapon. It's all so lackluster. That being said, still, I think there's something here for the game and a lot of negatives I've mentioned are fixable. I really hope the devs tend to these issues. I genuinely recommend people play the original, which is on Steam right now for around £4 or $4 if you've never played it, but brace yourselves for the lack of modern resolutions, which can be easily fixed with a little tweaking. I certainly can't recommend the remake right now though, and for that reason we've given it a 4 out of 10. And most of that score is sadly due to the elements that you can find in the original. Oh man, it's proper gutted me reviewing this. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this review and want to see more, then smash that subscribe button and give the video a like. It really goes a long way in helping out the channel. Or, if you feel YouTube is getting a little stale in the gaming department and want something completely fresh and unique that's still gaming related, then we've got a treat for you. Stay tuned. Peace out.